Is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
There comes a time when we must find our hearts, find our soul, and pursue our purpose for the greater good of all, for country, for humanity. There comes a time when we must manifest our true greatness. Yes? There comes a time, and that time is now. So let's get down to the essentials. The essentials. Serious radio for serious people who are committed to advancing the national conversation.
Time for the essential.
And good evening and welcome to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. I am your host, Hubert Edwards, and you are on The Essentials, The Reset. This evening, we want to have a conversation, a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Asking you to join us at 323-6232, 325-4316, and 325-4259. The text line is 422-4796, 422-GR96. Want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? What are the things which have been happening over the last while, and how are things going? But I want to start where I spent most of my day this morning. So this morning we had our second risk and regulatory outlook. And it was certainly, in my mind, a success. We attracted quite a number of persons who registered for the event, over 200 persons. The last time I checked, it was over 230 persons. And at any point in time, based on my looking, we had about 179, and that was the highest number I've seen. But I really want to pause here to, first of all, to say thanks to the Guardian Radio and Dwight specifically for having us on his show. We talked about that on Monday. He gave us the opportunity to talk about some relevant issues, and we got in a little bit of a plug for the show, and so I'm sure that impacted our participation significantly. But I also want to give thanks to the presenters, Miss Cassandra Nottage, Dr. Cassandra Nottage, Miss Shakira Roll from Cuba, Bahamas. Dr. Nottage is the National Risk Coordinator for AML. Shakira Roll is the IT manager. She spoke today on cybersecurity. Mrs. Nottage, Dr. Nottage brought us up to date on some of the issues around the AML, CFT challenges, being on blacklist, coming off the blacklist, the benefit, and how well the Bahamas is or has been performing. We heard from Anishka Colley, who took us through the soon-to-be-released regulations from the central bank as it relates to internal audit. It was a wonderful presentation. We also heard from Miss Carolyn Bell Wisdom. She is an auditor out of Jamaica, PwC. These days, these firms are all one firm across the Caribbean, so they don't really have location, so to speak, but I think, she lives in Jamaica. We also heard from Mr. Mark McKenzie out of Malaysia. He's a friend of this show. You have heard him here last time, and he's a senior financial sector specialist with CSEN over there, and gave us some quite a in-depth update and put some of the economic issues into context. We heard from Ms. Simone Martin. She is a former regulator and an individual who's operating in the crypto space. She's out of BVI Anguilla, and she brought a little bit of controversy in a good way to the discussion, really spice it up. But more importantly, not to diminish these individuals in any way. We also heard from our three regulators, the Central Bank, Bank of Supervision with Charles Littrell, the inspector. We heard from the Securities Commission with the Executive Director, Ms. Christina Roll, And we also heard from Michelle Fields, the superintendent of insurance. And it was a really, really wonderful exchange. And we want to give thanks to all of the persons who came out and participate. I gave a presentation also on enterprise risk management, governance, and regulatory compliance, and the way, all of the information, all of the discussion, the areas of discussion tied into that, and the importance of, really understanding that when it comes to risk management and we are talking about new normal, my take on that is we all knew what was normal, because everything from here on in is not normal. And as one of the presenters said, forget normal. Just forget about what was normal and just embrace what is, embrace the opportunities, embrace the disruption, embrace everything which is coming at you, because within that, I think are wonderful, wonderful opportunities. And I left him specifically for last because we have to give great kudos to our moderator, Mr. Donovan J. Fitroll, who was with us last year, came back again this year, and did a spectacular job keeping us on time, keeping us moving, keeping us going. It was just a wonderful moment, and I think the persons out there found value. I am hoping the persons found value out of the event. This is our second year. We're building a little bit of a tradition here, and we're looking forward to doing it some more. So Next Level Solutions was really, really pleased, is really pleased to have been in a position to bring that to you as we set on a path of, building our own thing, but in a way which respects and recognize that in order to grow, we have to help others grow. We have to help the industry grow. We have to help organizations to grow. We have to help individuals to grow. And that's why we're here. The philosophy is the same. It's Ubuntu. I am because we are. Regardless of what it is, if it's personal, if it's business, if it's philanthropic, the philosophy is still the same. Ubuntu. And that's where we are going, and that's where we are going to stay. And so we always, always embrace these opportunities to bring people together. We had representation from Malaysia, from Jamaica, from the Eastern Caribbean, and of course, highly represented, as usual, persons from the Bahamas. Great professionals, great expertise, deep insight, and persons would have walked away, with a keen sense that yes, we are looking at some significant vagaries of this year, 2022, coming out of COVID. But the way we ended, I think, is the way we ought to be approaching this. So in our ending panel, which was a panel with the regulators, Mark McKenzie and Simone Martin, I asked them to end by saying, hey, what should we be optimistic about? What are the things that we should be upbeat about? What are the things that we should feel good about? Because there's a lot. When you listen today to the things that the regulators are doing, the fact that the Bahamas is out front in the kind of crypto space within the region, the DARE Act coming out of the Securities Commission, some of the things which are being adjusted and amended coming out of the Insurance Commission. And we have to take some time, right? As an individual, I consider myself to be a practitioner in this space. We recognize that the Central Bank, the Securities Commission, the Insurance Commission, they are not allowed to come out and really talk too much about what they do. And us in the space, we on this side must recognize, when we recognize the great things that have been done. The central bank has come a far way in making some improvements as it relates to its interaction with its licensees. The Securities Commission keep and is still tweaking certain regulations and rules, and I think they're putting the Bahamas on the leading edge of this new revolution. And I believe, that with proper planning, with proper strategy, with careful thinking, we don't know where this goes. It can blow up in our faces. Things could go south, but if you're not in the game, you can't win. There's absolutely none. If you're out of the game, you lose. If you're in the game, there's a possibility for you to win. And so we want to say big kudos to the three big regulators in the Bahamas. We love what we heard today. We like what is coming down the pipe, and we believe that many persons would have walked away with the impression that they have their marching order, they know exactly what they should be looking at, and the Bahamas is really right now in a good space, even though there are significant challenges. So just wanted to put that out there and to say thanks to every single person who had any part to play in that. The life is a very funny thing. And for us who remains on this side of that equation, because I've heard it said before that life and death is part and parcel of the same equation. But for those of us who are currently on this side of the equation, we have much to be thankful for. We have much to be grateful for. And we must consistently remind ourselves that in that space, we have great obligations to do well, to do right, to make the most of this moment. And, we are not always at our best. We are not always as good as we wish to be. We are not always achieving that which we desire. But, every single one of us, no matter how good we are, we're still a work in progress. The good news about all of this is simply, you can turn over tomorrow. You can always turn over a new page and move forward. Why am I saying this? And why am I talking about life? Well, my intention today to start the show was to have a bit of an appeal. A friend contacted me today and said, can you mention this for me? And I said, no problem. It's a good friend, and it is for a good cause. It was someone is sick and they needed blood. And so I was willing to do that, but I always believe that the persons who are closer connected to any entity, to any situation, always have a more powerful way of convincing. So I say, come on the radio for 5 minutes. I'll allow you the 5 minutes and, talk about it. We'll make an appeal. As I was stepping through the door, I got a message which says, the person passed away. So we were going to make an appeal for this individual, the relative of the person who was going to call in, but the person is gone. And so we sent out our condolences. I absolutely don't know who the person is. I don't know the person. If the person who was coming on would be a friend of a friend, never met, never talked to. But in that moment, as I read the message, I just had to slow down. I had to stop. I had to think. And so here we are, preparing for something that we believe would, and we're hoping would bring value and would turn around whatsoever the circumstances. But the message says that's, what happened is irrevocable. Unfortunately, the person passed away. What is it that you have to do? What are the things that you want to do? What are the amends that you need to make? And I say this from a personal perspective because all of us are on that path of, recovering. We are all recovering from something. We are all preparing for something. We are all repairing something about our lives. But what are the things which you have in those arena of your life that needs attention? You have to get to it. I have to get to it. We all have to get to it. We all have to step out, and we have to step out boldly. We just have to make things happen because there is going to be a moment when we are no longer, we won't be available to anybody. We won't be able to do the things. There won't be any consciousness. Well, I don't know. I've never been on the other side. But as far as we know, there's no consciousness. The life will have left the body. So let's live in such a way where we can help others, where we can grow, where we can stop the rancor, where we can start to, uplift and grow. And, I do not expect everyone out there to always take the views that I take. I mean, I see life different from everyone else. That's why I'm an individual. And you see life different from everyone else. We may have generally the same views on a number of things, but there's at least one thing that we absolutely don't agree on or don't see the same way or have a totally different perspective on. That's what makes you unique. But all of us have something to give to others, to humanity. And we all have things that we want to do to give value and significance to ourselves, to feel that our time on our journey and our sojourn on this part of consciousness was valuable, was worthwhile. So even if we are not absolutely on the other side of the transaction, there's going to come a time when we slow down, when we are unable to do some of the things that we would like to do. And it is my hope that when I get to that point, I can look and say, well, I may have started late, I may have not gotten as much as I could have, but I've done some things. And I would want the same for you. I would want you to be in a place where you are comfortable, where you are reconciled with yourself, that you have used your life force. You have used your energy, use your smarts, use your brain to make yourself, in the first instance, better, to grow and develop you, but also to make others around you better, regardless of what they may be throwing at you, how they may treat you, how you may meet indifference. Regardless of that, always remember that there is a space that you carve out. I think it's Scrooge, who has a show here, and part of his line says, my place, something to that, I'm paraphrasing. So my place in the world isn't there until I've made it. And I think there's a lot of power in that, because regardless of where you find yourself, regardless of where you were born, you were elevated to, your real space is that intangible space which you have created when you become either comfortable with yourself or, just really, really miserable. Unreconcilable, miserable, or somewhere in between, totally comfortable and absolutely miserable. Someplace on that continuum is your space which you have carved out by your own mind, by your own thinking, by your own doing, by the level of satisfaction you have with what you're doing, by the level of fulfillment with the work you do, the work you don't do, the persons you help, the persons you don't help, the way you view your neighbor, the way you don't view your neighbor, the way you pursue your philosophy or don't, whatever it is. That space is the space you carve out by your own decisions, by your own thinking, by your own determination. So as I reflected on what was and what obviously will not be right now, we have to give thanks. We have to give thanks that we're here. We have to give thanks that we have the ability to do things. Over the last 30 months or so, I've learned some very valuable lessons. And one of those lessons is that no matter how many persons you have around you, no matter how cool you are with many, many persons, there's going to come a moment when even in the midst of a crowd, you are alone, by yourself, agitated, maybe even scared about what it is that you wish and desire to achieve. Thinking deeply about the help and the support and how much else you wish you had persons to walk this path with you. And I don't think it matters who you are. If you have $1 billion and you still can go buy the services, there is a moment where you are going to feel a bit alone. Some people feel it more than others. But my experience has been that there's a time when everybody goes, for the most part. It feels like that. There are persons around you, but it feels like everybody goes. And that's the moment where you have to dip and dig deep inside and find the wherewithal to find yourself, to hold yourself together, to reach out to those who are reaching out to you, to hold on to those who are dear to you, to become the person you really, really want to be. You have to dig, you have to fight, it doesn't come easily. It really, really don't come easy. And it won't come by you sitting back and laying back and hoping that something is going to happen. No, you have to work for it. You have to put the time in. You have to put the energy in. You have to do the things which are necessary for you to get to that place. So, as we go about life, because we have life, we still have our energy, we still have our life force, we still have blood coursing through our veins. Let us reflect some time on those who are gone. Let's show sympathy, empathy for those who are connected with them, who remain on this side and would be mourning and feeling the earth, just like the individual who I was going to get the opportunity to meet, as best as you meet someone over the radio. And so that's, we send condolences out to them and the families and all persons connected. But as we go through, let's take some time to reflect on the intangibles. Let's take some time to reflect on the more powerful side of us that is within us. And, what is it? And ask ourselves some question. What is it that I have to offer? Why am I here? Am I here to run around and be scared and be afraid and be pushed around and be knocked and be, just running thither and fro on the sea of life and the vagaries of individuals and their opinions and their views? Is that why we are here? Or are you going to carve out a path and just do you? But do it in such a way where you become a more powerful force, an individual who actually touches, embraces, and better those you come into contact with. It's not an easy way to think about things. I believe it's a Christian way. It's a spiritual way. I believe it's the right way. But it's not necessarily easy because, at the core of us, there's this selfishness which tugs deep within, do it for you, do it for me. Make sure you get the maximum money, charge them some more, do it for this, can be free, stuff like that. And all of those have their place. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you find freedom. Freedom is important. So for those of you who listen to me on radio or any place else, you know by now that I have written a book and, tried to keep it alive in some way. So what I've been doing since the year started, I've been doing some quotes from the book. So each morning I would wake up and I would prepare at least one quote, and I would post it on social media. And it is as much seeking to find upliftment for self as recognizing that it has the power to uplift others. I posted one recently and someone wrote to me, somebody I know, and say, I am going through this right now. And so, I'm always grateful when things like that happen. So the one for today, the one for this morning was, the one yesterday morning and this morning, but they're from the same page. Yesterday there was a time when I lived being very conscious of the views and opinions of others, and then I found freedom. So that was yesterday. This morning says, because that was the kind of revelation that I wrote in there, that was my position. But it always have a counterbalance. It says, position yourself to value the opinions of others, the opinions and views of others, but never become dependent thereof. Independence of self is so, so, so important. And I want to entreat everyone to do that. Work hard to be independent, because believe me, the pressures you feel, the challenges that you go through, they're not going to disappear. But I have found that when you reconcile you with you, when you reconcile you with you, like the you are now, become that much closer to the you that you really want to be, a lot of things don't matter. A lot of things don't matter. And things just glide off. You glide from around you. And you will be going through hell 3 times over. The heat is there. You know it's there. But it doesn't bother you. And that is why I would entreat anyone to spend some time working on self. Spend a lot of time, as a matter of fact. Spend all the time you can. But work on you in such a way that it's not only about you. Because just as my friend called and say, can you do this? And I say, yes. The reason is, if that friend calls me, I am going to do it. Because when I call on her, she helps. She has gone above and beyond to help with projects that we have done. She's always there supported. And so we have to have symbiotic relationships where we support each other. We have to recognize that no matter how good we are, no matter where we are, no matter how far we have come, we're not alone. We didn't do that alone. Even if you look around and you don't really see anybody close to you. At some point in time, you had the benefit of the interventions of others. So just want to, do that. Just wanted to say that, because the moment hit me a little bit, and I think it provided a little bit of a moment for reflection. I was speaking with a friend on my way here, and it's really something which is humbling to some extent, but also it reminds, it says, hey, remember your humanity. Remember your humanity. Embrace your humanness. Because there is going to be a moment. There is going to come a moment. And I'm not trying to be morbid here. But there is going to be a moment when at least, we're going to be way less capable than we are in this moment to do the things we wish we could do, or the things that we want to do and can do now. And we won't be as able then as we are now. So reflect on that. And again, to the individual, condolences. Hope things go as best as they can in this circumstance. And we wish you all the best. We're going to take a break here, and when we come back, we are going to get into the other side of the conversation. Something I want to kind of play around with. And if you want to join us, 323-6232, 325-4316, 325-4259, or hit us on the text line. You listen to The Essentials, The Reset. Don't move. Come right back.
For the best jerk in the Bahamas, you must have Baloo's. Pork, fish, and chicken served with our delicious country-style sauce and authentic festivals. Baloo's, Nassau East South. Call or WhatsApp 376-8951. Baloo's, the jerk with the soul of reggae and the spirit of Junkanoo. Baloo's jerk, traditional, slow-cooked to perfection. 376-8951. Get yours today.
Do you know you can get your business cards designed and printed for as low as 18 cents a card? If it's a poster you want, you can pay as little as $6 a square foot. If your print needs are short or long run, digital printing, wide format, or print consultation, call the best. Call Print Masters. Print Masters' goal is to provide its clients with the highest level of personal, professional service at an affordable price. Our state-of-the-art technology also makes working together efficient and easy. Laminations, business cards, flyers, posters, window and floor decals are just a few of the digitized print services offered at Print Masters.
Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
The Nassau Guardian has delivered news and views that matter since 1844. Now, the Nassau Guardian app is available at your fingertips. Download it at Google Play or the App Store. Get the best in news and commentary from the most trusted newspaper in the country with the Nassau Guardian app.
You know it's so essential.
And welcome back to the Essentials, the reset, as we reset from what we were talking about, a little bit about life, a little bit about risk and regulatory outlook. It's second one in the bag. And we move forward and look forward to 2023 when on the 2nd of February, we will do number 3, all things being equal. But I want to turn to some headlines, and I'm just going to go through this. Nothing planned of sort. But I've been watching the news, and one of the things I've done in recent times, from late last year, I spend time listening to some radio, some news, but not a lot. I've reduced the amount of time I spend reading the opinions of others and, kind of just wait. So most time I do not even read the newspaper in the morning. I get the newspaper and I usually read it maybe in the evening or the day after, 2 days after, when, by osmosis, it just happened, by osmosis you hear all sorts of stuff about this. But as you go through the newspaper in recent times, and I have some headlines, I think, going back from about January 20th up to yesterday, and before me I have today. We start to see a coalescing around certain issues. So the Prime Minister today is defending its legislative agenda. The opposition is saying that the government is not taking its legislative agenda seriously. And there is the upcoming convention for the FNM, and there are persons vying for positions of deputy leader and chairman. But the area which I think is much more important to me, while you don't diminish any news, I see here Michaela Barnett Ellis named FNM Senator. Sanders want to hire Hilton employees, which is a positive thing. When you read the headlines, Grand Bahama Airport operating at a loss of $3.6 million per year, you start to get this feeling that the really, 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 really true state of the Bahamas is unfolding. And while there are some positives and while there are some efforts to push the country in a particular direction, there's also some important tensions. And you start to get the impression that maybe there is no wrong or right party in the conversations. There are extent to which one party may be wrong or right, not clear, sometimes overly optimistic, sometimes overly pessimistic, so on and so forth. But you would want to think that there is a middle ground, a truer position which is yet to be unveiled. But that true position will have to be, unearthed by yourself. It's not going to come from pundits. It's not going to come from talk show hosts. It's not going to come from politicians. It's not going to come from party supporters. It's something that you will have to draw for yourself so you can really hit on the truth. Government's revenue growth expectation overly optimistic, says Moody. Stress that unexpected economic shocks, revenue collection challenges could restrict government plans. So here it is that a rating agency is saying that the Davis administration, Davis-Cooper administration, Davis administration, I see these days we're using those interchangeably. But the administration is overly optimistic in its projections. Now, are they right or are they not? But someplace in there is an important element. I think there is. It's like this. Let's say you are a gentleman and you see a young lady that you like and you want to court. You have an expectation that she's going to respond to you. That's what you want, yeah? So there's this expectation. And so if you have an expectation, that means you're setting the bar at a particular level. If you have no expectation, if you one of them guys like me, you be shy and you give up. Nothing to be done. There's nothing there. But if you have an expectation of success, then you kind of start to set the bar at a particular level, wouldn't you? And you start to behave consistent with the place you set the bar. Now, you may, on analysis, have set the bar too high because you are who you are. You're just really a little bit too overly confident, too much into you. You may have gotten it wrong. But in that whole process, if I am looking at you and I'm analyzing you and I'm doing so objectively, I must start from your position of expectation. And I'm now going to ask myself the question, why have you set that expectation? Well, you're trying to court this young lady because you want her to like you, you want her to love you, you want her to marry you and become a partner in building a family, and you all run off in the sunset happily ever after. So that is your aspirational journey, yeah? So everything that you do is guided by that, is pushed by that. So you have a reason for doing the things that you're doing. While I wouldn't argue with Moody's, I too believe that there is a high level of optimism in the numbers as presented. Now, bearing in mind that some of these numbers which have been presented in context are 2, 3, 4 years down the road, 2025, 26, that's 3 years, 24, 3 or 4 years. But when we talk about them as if they're right now in the present to be achieved tomorrow. But the question is, and I've been really asking this in different ways over a long period of time, the question is, why is it that the current administration has become so fascinated with getting the country to this 25% revenue to GDP? Why? Why did you, Mr. Gentleman, set your eyes on that particular girl? Why? There's a reason. There's something about that individual. May not necessarily be attractive to somebody else. May not necessarily be an individual that some other persons would want to be with. But there's something about that individual that suits you, that suits your purpose, that fits right into your circumstances. 25% debt to GDP. Sorry, not debt, revenue to GDP. What does 25% revenue to GDP does for the Bahamas when you considered it along historical lines? Well, what it does is it more or less balances the budget. It more or less balances the budget. The Bahamas has an expenditure record of somewhere around $3 billion. And 25% brings it to just around $3 billion. If you put that within context of some of the things which are happening, the PM defends Grand Bahama investor confidence, where he said some people want to invest in Grand Bahama, but they don't think things are all perfect there. So that would be one of those headwinds that you have to contend with, even as you think about getting this level of revenue. So sometimes the persons on the inside understands more fully what is happening and what is needed. And as you turn the pages of the newspaper, you may not read the newspaper like this, but as you turn the pages of the newspaper and you look and you see something which says inflation in 19 countries using the euro hits another record. Inflation is going through the roof. Inflation is representing a significant headwind in the recovery from this pandemic. That inflation is going to affect education. It's going to affect many, many aspects of the way we see life, the way we do life, the way things play out in real terms. We know that there is a recovery happening in the tourism sector. But here we see the chamber chief, I think this is out of Grand Bahama, chamber chief saying, don't get sidetracked over investor confidence. The Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce president yesterday urged the government not to get sidetracked by the future over the Prime Minister suggesting investors' confidence is waning. So the Prime Minister is pushing in one direction and some other persons are pushing in another direction. Realtor is expressing concern over Grand Bahama Lucayan sale, said that more of that should be local. The PwC chief is eyeing gradual return to a healthier economy. Central bank is no longer going to sell you securities, so you have to go buy them from a registered B6 broker. Revenues of 1.3 billion increase will not be easy to achieve, and the PM is pledging a new era of prosperity. Why am I reading these random things from one single newspaper? Just one newspaper, you know. There are so many pros and cons, up and down, for and against arguments. But at the end of the day, I want us to not lose sight of the fact that there is a reality out there which is emerging. We are discovering new costs. One of them reported recently is the additional amount to complete the stadium, the baseball stadium, from 21 to 27 to another $31 million is going to be needed. Now, that $31 million is a new discovery. And as you go through the newspaper on a daily basis, you start to get the impression, or at least I start to get the impression, that there are a lot of things out there which needs urgent attention. A lot of things out there which will take away potentially some of the buoyancy, nascent as it may be, from the whole recovery process for the country. And so we have to start asking ourselves as citizens and residents, what part do I have to play in this? One of the things which came up at today's discussion was when it was Mark McKenzie who talked about the whole idea of inflation, and we reflected on the whole idea that economic scarring is going to be a real thing. We heard about kids who literally spend the entire 2 years or so in the pandemic so far out of school, and some of them may have gone irrecoverably, done with school, and not learned anything for 2 full years. How is that going to come back to bite us? How is that going to impact the country? On the positive side, we see where we're receiving additional monies for overflight fees. The IDB analysis finds several infrastructural deficiencies in the Bahamas. Several infrastructural deficiencies. What does that mean? First of all, you have infrastructural deficiencies. So it may be light, water, road, school, government buildings, government systems. There are deficiencies. And it didn't say one, it says several. This thing says a recent the IDB gap development analysis, which measures the difference in standard throughout the region, has found several infrastructural deficiencies in the Bahamas surrounding telecommunications and digital adoption, energy, transport, and water. The findings contained in the recently released Caribbean Quarterly Economic Bulletin point out that deficiencies were also, and it continues on B3, were also found in environmental performance, education, governance, and the business environment, economic complexities, health, small and medium-sized enterprise, and financial inclusion, according to the 2021 Development Gap Index. Listen to that. My question to you, therefore, on the back of these lacking, how is it that the Bahamas is going to pay its way out of these circumstances? I have the privilege, let me use that word, I think it's a privilege, to sit in a group, it's a WhatsApp chat group, with some really important persons in the country. And so, it's an immense privilege to be there. And I spend a lot of time listening and watching the conversations. And one of the things which become kind of patently clear to me from time to time is the extent to which there is this tension between what was and what ought to be. In many instances, in many ways, we are all in on for dear life to the way things were. And there's also this, I think, maybe there's a recognition, but a lack of enunciation, a lack of declaration that many, many, many arrangements in the Bahamas, many, and I believe too many. So now don't start asking me them because, I'll have to go number them off. But I think there are a number of arrangements in the Bahamas which I believe, in fact, creates a sense of, what's the word I'm looking for? Subsidizing life. Subsidizing the way we live. Because there are some things which, if done, taking into consideration the true economic cost, and because there's government involved, it's never ever going to be that way for everything. Government will have to absorb some stuff. But if the true economic cost was to be taken into consideration for a number of things, we would have to pay more for these things. And maybe then the government would need less taxes. But to the extent that the government pays for these things for us, it will mean that the government need more taxes. I think in this whole discussion around whether $1.3 billion is sufficient or too aggressive is a reluctance to acknowledge that we need the $1.3 billion and more in real terms. We do. We actually do. The $1.3 billion does not include payments, capital payments for debt. It includes the interest, yes, but it doesn't include the capital payments for debt. And in my non-economic, I'm not trained in economics, but in my non-economic thinking, just thinking as an accountant and someone who has spent some time in banking, I say at some point in time, you have to earn more money to pay your debt down. If you making $3 billion, which is what 25% gives you, and you spending $3 billion, which is where we are at today, that's why we have a deficit, and the 25% would get you to near balance or a small deficit. If that is the equation, at what point in time will the country have a reduction in its debt situation? And is that reality creating a vicious cycle? Because the longer the debt stay at an elevated level, the more capacity it takes out of the country, the operation of the country, its ability to season the economy for growth. It's my belief. In recent time, we heard from the governor, we says, pre-COVID output not good enough. You have to grow better, have to grow faster, you have to do more. The governor came back again and said, brace for inflation, tougher credit access in 2022. Mr. James Smith came back and he said, debt committee chair on economy, still a lot of uncertainty. Economy appears to be gaining steam in the early weeks of 2022, but Smith is cautiously optimistic. The Deputy Prime Minister says the National Financial Literacy Campaign plan this year to improve savings and investment, a recognition that Bahamians are not saving, or a recognition that Bahamians cannot save. Which is it? There is a view that many, many people have a lot of money out there. But there's also a recognition that, some people don't have any. If you were to do a per capita spread, I think you would find, and I mean really take all of the money, that's all of the savings and all of the investment owned by Bahamians and divide it through by the 300,000, it would be a very high number compared to many, many countries. But that's what statistics can do for you, give you a false impression. The truth is that investment and those savings are owned by very, very few people. So part of the question to be asked is, are Bahamians not saving enough, or are Bahamians unable to save enough? It's an important question. I believe it's an important question to ask. Why is it important to ask that question? Because until you start to do that, you go on the assumption that, we're just not doing what we're supposed to do. And I believe the answer is between the two. Some persons are not saving enough, but there are also some individuals who absolutely just cannot save enough. We have a caller here on Guardian Radio. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Edwards. How you doing?
Good evening, sir. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right. I always listen to you, right? The thing is, I agree with you that you say you're not an economist, right? I just read a little general knowledge. And economics is almost as difficult as linguistics. Which is, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I was just looking at, the economics outlook, the global economic outlook, right?
Yeah.
And juxtaposing all the little general knowledge I have here and there. And so I'm very afraid that the status quo seems to be non-clairvoyant, right? Politicians, etc. When I look at the geopoliticking and the economic outlook of the world, right? They're actually manipulating the globalists. And so the fact that some people are limited in their thinking or just, I don't know what it is, but for some reason people can't really see what's going on. It'd be not juxtaposing the biblical text with contemporary scenarios. It's just like, I don't even have to be an economist to see that this is being manipulated. I'm looking at the situation in Ukraine and Russia, China in the South China Sea, and China geopolitical bullying, Indonesia with Indonesia, Mongolia, Philippines, Taiwan, Singapore, Vietnam, whatever, Japan, Australia, etc. Trade wars, the Cold Wars, right? So I read too much, but I'm glad I did. Because if I stop reading now, I still be ahead of a lot of people in the world. I could see exactly where the world is headed. And so what I'm afraid of is that this is really deliberately being done and all planned out to bankrupt nations and control the world economics. And this is, I look at some information Russell Brand the other day. It's a guy I listened to. He's very accurate, documented emails and everything. And we see where Vanguard and BlackRock, I think, two NGOs. I think BlackRock, they said, is worth $9.7 trillion, right?
Yep.
Well, on top of that, we know quantitative easing will be the order of the day, right? You know how the banking system works. I don't need to get into that, but I'm afraid
I
that...
don't know how much more quantitative easing can take place, Void. There's a lot that has gone over the last 20 months.
I'm saying that we all being duped. A lot of people are just underread and misled, and I was upset because, you know, they were saying, you know, 52 stopping people from getting vaccinated, but I say that people could be naive to believe they were vaccinated. I read the Great Reset. Vaccination cannot reset, make the global economy just turn over. Suppose Russia and Ukraine break out in a war, and the United States are already sending troops there. So this is now why they're calling for workers in Canada and America. This is now why they're dropping all the pandemic protocol response, which was designed to bankrupt nations and individuals. And so what Alex Jones said 30 years ago was that it was always designed to suck up the remaining wealth. And so we see the wealth disparity increasing. And the status quo, you know, I've read so much until I really can't be misled, to tell you the truth, Mr. Edwards. And I just upset where the world is headed, and I know where it's headed. A lot of people are being duped and they're being misled and spoon-fed all this garbage. You know, God put me here for a reason, you know, brother.
Yeah, well, you need to use it, and you need to make sure you use it for good,
you know, I prefer to help. I prefer to help and write a book on prostate and cannabis and prostate health.
Yeah, well, do that
from a patient's perspective.
Do that.
You know,
I think
I could help more because I was always a voice in the wilderness until they found out, but they haven't seen anything yet. According to the COVID-19 and the Great Reset written by the economic firm Klaus Schwab, it's going to get worse. So who God bless, no man curse. Give thanks.
Give thanks, 652. You know, whatsoever you have inside of you, you know, write the book, so that when you are no longer on this side of consciousness, you know, we can remember you. Well, the persons who are left, I'm not saying I'm going to be here, but, you know, you understand what I mean. Yeah, so are we at a place where, for the Bahamas, and I don't want to come across as, you know, making any gloomy statement, right? I just want us to kind of be a little bit more real about what the circumstances are. Is the Bahamas of 2022 present? Does it have the same capacity as it did in 2000? Does it have the same capacity and the same energy as it did in 1992, in 1967? Is it that some of the things which we took for granted then, we can no longer take for granted, but we are kind of holding on for dear life? Because, you know, to shift would create a fundamental shift in the lives of many, or at least in the lives of some. But in that moment, in that process of resisting that shift, there's some, very likely many, who will be crushed in the process. Unless we make this fundamental change, recognizing the things which need to be fixed today, 20, 25 years, 10 years down the road, may be a little bit more difficult. Are we willing to take those risks? Are we willing to accept the issues which we are faced with, so that when you read a headline which says absolutely livid over doubling, tripling of tax, you know, the government says we are going to charge a little bit more tax to persons who we think are in a better position to pay, but when that is done, there's a blowback. Is it the right thing to do? Are the persons who are sending the blowback, are they in the right? Is there a middle ground? What exactly is the middle ground? And in this discussion back and forth, is the Bahamas being squeezed out? Is the Bahamas being squeezed out? Because the truth is, and like I said to you before, I say this all the time, I personally don't want to pay any more taxes. But I recognize very quickly that that's a human response. That's my own response. That's a personal response and maybe at some level a selfish response. But on the other hand, I want to enjoy all the benefits which comes from public service. And the question is, how do we afford it? But most equations have two sides. I talked about some things once with a little bit of a fable of a cheese. And I think I'm going to repeat that this evening. Because there are two sides to this coin. There is the clear indication of maybe we need a bit more. But there's also very, very clear, unequivocal, that we need to do a better job at spending and using and exploiting what we already have. There's simply, it appears, and this isn't resting with any one administration, any one person, but there's simply too many indications of wastage, which is using up and eroding, I think, in a significant way, resources of the country. And it puts the country in pressure because government as a machinery, government as an operation has to be funded. Public goods have to be funded. And there's no other place to get it from but from me and you, or to sell the things we already own as a public through the ownership or holdings or under the trusteeship of the government. That's the only way to do it. So where are we? How are we going to change when we look and we hear statements like Alcitas assures that debt will be settled, because debt is at the forefront of our minds. Farm powered by artificial intelligence and robotics could be operational by mid-2023. Is this the way to go? Will this add significantly to our own consumption of food and vegetable and become a means of import replacement? Where are we? Are we at a place where we can now start to think about how we are going to use farming and the diversification of other industries to make sure that the Bahamas is in a better place, a better state? So that when the discussion about government targets budget surplus by 2025 arrive, we are kind of all on the same page. Is a surplus a target? If I was to ask you to forget your allegiance, forget your philosophical leanings, forget everything which is extraneous to the question that I'm going to ask you, should the Bahamas have a surplus in 2025, what would be your answer? What would be your answer? Should the Bahamas have a surplus? If you wish, you could give me a call. You could share your answer. I have a view on that, and we'll talk about it on the other side of this break. You listen to the Essentials, The Reset. We're just kind of cruising through the newspaper, most of the business section. We're just picking up the headlines as we go, and we're talking about them. Because there's a pattern, there is some information. There's almost a story behind the stories when you put them all together. Don't move. Come right back.
The Nassau Guardian has delivered news and views that matter since 1844. Now, the Nassau Guardian app is available at your fingertips. Download it at Google Play or the App Store. Get the best in news and commentary from the most trusted newspaper in the country with the Nassau Guardian app.
For the best jerk in the Bahamas, you must have balus, pork, fish, and chicken served with our delicious country-style sauce and authentic festivals. Balus, Nassau East South, call or WhatsApp 376-8951. Balus, the jerk with the soul of reggae and the spirit of Junkanoo. Balus jerk, traditional, slow-cooked to perfection. 376-8951. Get yours today.
Boy, why you look so mashed up like clothes at the washer?
No, boy, just a hard day, boy.
Hard day? What happened? The breakfast lady ran out of tuna and gritty.
We need to start joking about everything, you know. This serious, boy. This real serious, boy.
Boy, what's serious? Tell me.
All right, well, today, boss gave us, boy, one big contract. And nobody else get a chance and nobody say nothing.
Boy, you know that ain't right. You know government contracts ain't supposed to go that way.
Yeah, but nobody's saying nothing. Boss man just tell people to sign the papers. Then he send me to meet his boy downtown and collect this envelope.
You need to tell somebody. You need to become a whistleblower.
You know I's a real man, but I never blow no whistle. I be drunk all my life in Junkanoo.
No way. A whistleblower is someone who tells people what they see when they see something wrong happening at work.
But I ain't no whistleblower, and I ain't no snitch. I still white there, you know.
But ain't nobody can know it's you. All you gotta do is call Crime Stoppers, or you could text them from inside the Crack Crime Bahamas app. They don't ask about you. And your call goes straight through to Miami, so nobody know you is. And if you text, your message get mixed up like Kong Salad.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau, or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
And welcome back. We're having ourselves a little bit of a journey, a trot, if you will, through the newspapers, through the headlines, mostly the business headlines. And we are trying to see, you know, what type of a message, what type of information we can glean in between the lines, in between the words. And so we're just picking them at random, going through them for the most part, day by day. I'm all the way up to January 28th now. And when we left, we got stuck on government target surplus by June 2025. And government predicts national debt will peak at $1.2 billion. Okay. So here are two things, and I think this is from the recent projections coming out. So two things are happening here. The government plans to spend as much as it takes in for 1 year, or close to that for 1 year, and then you will start to see surplus. I think the first surplus is about 78 million, and then it was 200 or some number like that. Don't quote me, but I think the subsequent 2 years went into a surplus. The question I have for you is, do you agree that we need to have a surplus in 2025? And if you agree that there needs to be a surplus, I want you to tell me why. Why should there be a surplus? Is there something wrong with running a deficit all the way up to 2025? Now, I'm not one of those persons who are out there archishly challenging the government and saying you can't do this and this woman. I'm simply asking questions as to why do we want that anyway? If the things that we need to turn the country around, to put it on a sustainable path, can be afforded within the confines of the budget over the next 3 or 4 years, then absolutely what left is a real surplus. But if that is not the case, so I'm saying to you, if, for example, our capital budget is at a level which is projected to be about 3% of GDP, if the capital budget is at $300 million, and we have a significant amount of foreign indirect investment or domestic investment, and the infrastructure and public-private partnerships are percolating at a very good level and a good cadence, which is solving some of the infrastructural deficiencies that we talk about. If that is happening, and within that context we run a surplus, then that's perfectly fine from my perspective. Absolutely, unequivocally, no problem. However, if that is not the case, if there's still deficiencies in our infrastructure, digital, telecommunication, health, education, hospitals, I said health already, but hospitals, if there are these deficiencies identified by the IDB, if they still exist, then clearly, if you run a deficit against that backdrop, it means that we are not spending sufficiently to correct those issues. So the analysis for one, do we need more money? I believe we do. I believe that the 25% set by the current administration, as aspirational as it is kind of where it needs to be, in my view. I've said this many, many times, many years, long time ago, from maybe as far back as 2013, that the level of revenue taken in by the Bahamas compared to its peers within the region and, a little bit further afield was just too low. 16%, 15%, 18% compared to, 20, 25%, and in some instances, some countries as much as 30%. Now, when we start to hear that, we automatically start to think, well, I don't want to be taxed anymore. I don't want to pay more taxes. But the truth is, an effective treatment of paying a little bit more and proper managing of the resources, proper implementation in the first instance, but proper and effectively so, in terms of the infrastructural things which are needed, is going to benefit you and I in the long run. The Bahamas will not grow if it have absolutely bad roads, where tourists come and jump in potholes. I'm not saying that this is the case, but I'm just giving you a scenario. It will not grow in the Family Islands if the health facilities there don't improve. If persons can be satisfied that should they have health emergency, then that will be taken care of. Now, persons are going to live there. That is, people who like that type of a thing and willing to deal with that. But it will never, ever get to the point where a whole lot of people there, which really unleash the underlying economic capacity of those islands. And maybe some persons don't want that to change. But as a country, is that the best state for it? So the fact of the matter is, if there are investment, if there are infrastructure to be upgraded, and then we decide, well, you're going to run a surplus, it means that we are not spending sufficient to upgrade that infrastructure. So I personally am ambivalent about, deficit or surplus. If the deficit is created and the funds are used for productive reasons, they're used effectively without wastage, and the projects, the investment have real payback, which will then cause the economy to grow and advance in GDP. So 25% of X then becomes $4 billion. Think about it this way. We grow the economy because we invest in it through capital investment, through PPPs, through investment coming in. And all of a sudden, 25%, this aspirational 25% of X becomes 4 billion. That would be 25% of 20, yeah? Or some number like that. Anyway, it becomes 4 billion. Our expenditure remains at around 3 billion or so. We have a decent surplus, but we also have decent infrastructure. The economy is well seasoned. The country is readily attractive for expansion, such that the statement made by the Prime Minister, however, which side of it you come down on in terms of Grand Bahama, you don't hear discussions like those. If we're in that scenario, then all of a sudden, the country is ready, I believe, for greater growth. And then with more growth comes greater revenue. And then all of a sudden now we are balancing all sides of the equation. We have enough money to pay down the debt. We have invested enough in infrastructure, but we are also taking care of the regular thing, the school, the hospitals, the regular thing. We have no potholes. When the tourists come, they say, we're not going back because this is paradise, real paradise. We're just going to stay here. They heard that the Bahamas is paradise, but they feel it everywhere they turn. They go down to the fish fry, and the fish fry is out of this world. There's no garbage receptacles around the back. That is dealt with efficiently. Everything is copacetic. If we want to get there, if that's where we are going, then at some point in time, I think we have to kind of come to the realization that maybe a little bit more is needed. And maybe when we create these expectations for a reason, because we have developed an insight into exactly what is needed. And it may be the case that where we are now at 18, 17, 16% just simply won't cut it. $3.4 million in deferred loans still in the banking system. So there are a number of individuals out there who just simply can't pay their loans, and it's been deferred to $3.4 billion. Luckily, fortunately for us, the predictions just didn't pan out. That's a good thing. Fortunately for us, the financial system strong, well capitalized, and liquidity is too much. Fortunately for us. Unfortunate for the bank, they have too much money, they can't lend, and I'm sure that they want to do that. Unfortunately for us, because they can't lend, they're going to charge us more fees, and they're going to find other ways of making profit. So, on balance, we're going to get hit anyway. But the reality is, there's some persons out there who are struggling. $3.4 billion in loans deferred suggests that there are a number of individuals who have challenges. And that may be one or two of these guys who had their shops burned down at Potter's Key. We see here where plans are in motion for 6 Potter Key store lost in the fire to be rebuilt. That's a positive thing. One of my friends owned one of that, and so we celebrate for him. Sandals reopens after $55 million renovation. Big positive for the Bahamas, and we see earlier where they want to take in those persons from the Colonial Hilton. So they're in the midst of challenges. There's still some good things which are emerging. The governor still warns and is very careful to say to you, look, tourism expected to fall short of pre-pandemic levels in 2022. So even though we are looking at a recovery, even though we are chanting this recovery, that recovery is not going to be as buoyant as pre-COVID. That in and of itself represents a challenge to the country. It represents a challenge, and it makes and put into context the difficulty of us moving from where we are to get that $1.3 billion. Non-performing loans increased to 527 million. So while there's $3.4 million in deferred loans where people actually come and say, you can come back and pay in 6 months actively, we have an arrangement. There's also non-performing loan of 527 billion. It's increasing, kind of indicative of some performance there. The central bank is keeping an eye on inflation and U.S. interest rate. Why is this important? Because if U.S. interest rate goes up, then the 43% or so of U.S. dollar debt that we owe is going to increase. Well, at least to the extent that some of it is variable rate. I think a large portion of that, as I understand it, may be at fixed rate. So you may not see a whole lot of shifts. And while this is not, necessarily an headline in that direction, we see where the central bank appoints new inspector of banks and trusts, Karen Roll, a daughter of the soil. And I think, if my memory serves me right, this is the first time an individual who is, as some people refer to as an indigenous Bahamian. I don't necessarily like the term, but you understand what I mean. I can't find a better one. Somebody who was born and grew here, you're born here, type of thing, has held that position. This is a really, really positive development. I send congratulations out to her. But this is a really positive development for the country, for professionals in the country. And it signals, I think, a maturation. It signals an important maturation. I think so. I believe so. So that one is an aside. I just wanted to throw that in because her face pop up on the front. I know her. I was at the central bank for a short time, and Karen is someone who, if I see on the other side of the road and I wave, she will recognize me. So congratulations to her. We are at a place where we have some important decisions to make as a country. This is my view. I believe that the persons who are tugging to the right and those who are tugging to the left both have some measure of truth in the tension that they created. So if we're doing a little bit of a tug of war, and you grab one end of the rope and I grab one end of the rope, the pressure is going to be concentrated at some point along that rope. If that rope is not strong enough, there is a point where it's going to be weakened. The integrity will weaken and it will pop. That is really the point where we need to focus on. If one side pull in one direction and the other side pull in the other direction and something pops in the middle, what exactly is going to happen for a country? So if we need to increase and get to that big number, $1.3 billion. And on the other side, we say we absolutely can't do the things which are necessary to get there. Is there another path to it? And if there's another path, if there are options, then that's the way the conversation should be going. Let's put all of the options on the table. Let's talk about how we can reduce wastage. Let's talk about how we can do contracts better. Let's talk about how we can get a building out of the ground which is supposed to cost $5 million, actually costing $5 million or less. Let's figure out a way where the Bahamas itself as an organism becomes better at doing what it is supposed to do to uplift the lives of the individuals within the country, to serve the population better in all aspects, every single aspect, whether it's education, whether it's the ability to express your religion, your spirituality, whether it is in health, whether it is in transportation, digital transformation, whether it is in communication, whatsoever level it is. Let's focus on how the Bahamas as an organism better do that. Better make the lives of Bahamians and those who are attached to the country, those who work here, those who invest here, those who find livelihood through here. Let's see how that can be better. How the pie can be grown. And let us get to the point where we refuse to impose artificial pressures on discussions just way too early. And part of that happens because sometimes we are gung-ho about our own views. We become blinkered. We put on these blinkers and we decide, I don't care what is to the left. I don't care what is to the right. I'm just going straight down the middle. But oftentimes, those pull, those little tension you feel to the left and to the right are important. As a matter of fact, they're necessary. They're necessary because though it may seem like you're going straight down the middle, the truth is it may be more effective to be wobbling from point A to point B, not in a bad way, not a bad wobble, to cover more bases, because at the end, it's going to be more beneficial. You're straight down the middle, or the path that you have taken may not necessarily be the right path. It is not necessarily a wrong path either. It's just not optimal, taking into consideration all the interests and what is in the benefit of the greater good. So we have to start really, I think, rethinking how we have these conversations. I really, really believe so. I think the Bahamas is at a place today where there needs to be a level of bipartisan type of a discussion which has never been seen before. Not here and maybe no place else. But why would you say that? Why would you ask for that? Because the Bahamas is different. Some other places just totally got it wrong, totally messed up, and is now totally suffering. Jamaica is one of those places where I was born, where I grew up. Got a lot of things wrong early, and while some things are being fixed now, persons have suffered and paid the price and still paying the price. The Bahamas has made some mistakes, but has not gotten it as wrong as some others because of some fortunate circumstances, but also because some things were done right. And so the issue on the table is, how can, even in the face of getting some things wrong, how can we inject some of the right things? And I believe that an environment with a greater collaborative approach, where at least the discussions, at least the conversations, at least there is a moment of seeking closer consensus, not perfectly clinical agreement, but closer consensus, may benefit us in the long run, may benefit the country in the long run. Because one of the things which has become unequivocally clear in the last while, and for anyone who studies the country, who pays attention, is that the impact of government, the impact of politics is so powerful, you cannot divorce yourself from it. And this vagary is being enhanced by the fact that I think from 1997, one in, one out, one in, one out, the change in policies and position need some settlement. We have a call on the line. Caller, go ahead.
Good afternoon or good evening, Mr. Edwards. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic.
This is a very interesting topic that you're having today, And I appreciate your honesty about your birthplace and where you grew up and how they got so much things wrong. What I'm drawing for that, and what most people should draw from your statement, is that if a lot of things go fundamentally wrong inside a country, you could slip into almost a state of disarray and take you a couple of decades to get out of it. And my thing is that we as Bahamians, whether it be the politician or the people, we have been standing on the shoulders of our forefathers, like you say, who did some things right at the beginning. But the thing about it is, in order for us to grow as a people, we have to build on these fundamental things that was right, which was the pillars of our country, and really take it to another level, because it's almost like a inflation, like how inflation goes. If you don't really build on the product, then eventually the product, the good stuff that is built on, it just gets dissolved away during time, because it wouldn't be adequate for the time that would pass by. And I wonder if you understand what I'm saying.
I understand what you're saying, and I think you're right.
What would happen is that the pillars of our economy can only hold us up so long.
Yes.
Without improving it and taking it to another level.
Yeah.
Our first black majority rule government did a lot of things fundamentally right.
Mm-hmm.
I can name national insurance and a couple others.
Lots of other administration. Don't want to cut you too much, but we're running out of time. I have only a couple seconds to go, so you just you made some really, really valuable points. You can just put a cap on that quickly for me, please.
Thank you. Okay, my final thing is that we as a people have to get away with these adequate taxes. There are almost a third of our economy. I would dare to say more than a third of our economy is not being taxed properly.
Carla, we are clean out of time. Sorry, we can catch up at another time and we can complete that. But so I just want to leave you there. That's what I felt like doing today. I just wanted to go through that. I've been looking at these headlines and I've been seeing this pattern, because I believe that there's a better way of having the conversation. Let's ask ourselves what is needed and then put on the table how is the best way to get to that place. Not saying that this isn't it and that isn't it, because at the end of the day, we have to do what is in the best interest of the Bahamas. We always end by saying, do not allow your greatness to become a victim of your unwillingness to change. You've been listening to The Essentials, The Reset. Walk good, one love. Jagaid Ubuntu.
Essentials,